From the moment this story broke, the internet felt the ground shift, because what Kandi Burruss just discovered isn't drama, isn't gossip, isn't rumor. It's a shocking agreement buried so deep, so intentionally hidden, that fans are asking how Todd Tucker and Porsha Williams managed to keep this secret from erupting until now. And the moment Kandi found out, her reaction didn't just shake the room. It broke. Her sources close to the situation claimed Kandi didn't hear about this agreement through the grapevine. She didn't find out by accident. She wasn't told in a calm, controlled conversation. No, she stumbled onto it the worst way possible, through a leaked document she was never meant to see. And according to insiders, the second her eyes hit the page, she froze. She stopped breathing. She whispered, "This can't be real." But it was real. It is real. And the fallout from this revelation is already spiraling. It's out of control. People are calling it the moment that could permanently fracture Kandi and Todd's marriage. Others think this will spark a war between Kandi and Porsha that Bravo never imagined. A storyline too explosive for television and too personal for reconciliation. Even cast members past and present are allegedly scrambling behind the scenes, trying to distance themselves before the full truth becomes public. Because this wasn't just an agreement. This wasn't just a signature. It wasn't just a private transaction between Todd and Porsha. This was a strategic, calculated, deeply personal arrangement with implications that hit Kandi on every emotional level possible: trust, loyalty, marriage, friendship, business, reputation. And the moment she realized what Todd and Porsha had done behind her back, she didn't yell, she didn't fight, she didn't threaten, she broke. And if what insiders are saying is true, the agreement contains a detail so shocking it could destroy more than one relationship forever. Long before Kandi Burruss found the agreement, long before tears filled her eyes and confusion overtook her entire body, there was a tension brewing beneath the surface of her marriage, something she couldn't quite explain, something she could sense but never pinpoint. It wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. A shift in energy, a hesitation in Todd's voice, a strange distance between friends who once shared the most effortless chemistry on camera and off. Kandi and Porsha weren't just castmates. They were women who had built years of reality TV history together. They had fought, reconciled, fought again, grown, forgiven, and stretched their friendship through seasons of chaos and fame. They weren't perfect, but there was an understanding, codon, unspoken boundary that even in their worst moments, there were lines you simply didn't cross. But Todd and Porsha, that dynamic was different. Not romantic, not flirty, not scandalous in the traditional sense, but there was a connection, a familiarity, a history rooted in business, production, and quiet behind-the-scenes conversations that fans never fully paid attention to. Todd wasn't just Kandi's husband. He was a producer, a strategist, someone who understood the industry, the narratives, the leverage, and the opportunities that came from knowing the right people and making the right moves. Porsha, on the other hand, was a star media savvy, charismatic, influential, and incredibly aware of how to build a brand, maintain relevance, and capitalize on moments. Their paths crossed professionally multiple times. And according to insiders, each time something shifted, sometimes barely noticeable, sometimes deeply felt by those observing. Todd admired Porsha's ambition. Porsha respected Todd's production mind. And neither of them realized, or, perhaps, cared that their professional synergy might one day bleed into personal boundaries. Kandi began noticing small things first. A phone call: Todd stepped out to take the moment she walked into the room. A text message he cleared a little too quickly. A meeting that wasn't originally on his schedule. A shared project he never fully explained. It wasn't enough to accuse. It's not enough to confront. But it was enough to trigger that quiet intuition. The kind that keeps you awake at night for no definable reason. Meanwhile, Porsha was navigating her own whirlwind. Life changes, brand expansions, new opportunities, and a growing need to secure her future. She was making big moves, major decisions, the type of strategic plays that required allies, powerful ones. Someone who could advise, negotiate, and quietly broker behind-the-scenes deals. Someone like Todd. The public didn't see their collaboration forming, but insiders did. They saw the shift. They saw the prolonged conversations during cast events. They saw the way Porsha leaned in when Todd spoke about business. They saw Todd lingering just a little longer when Porsha asked questions about production or deals. To everyone else, it was harmless, professional, even respectable. But to those closest to the situation, it was clear something was brewing in the shadows. Something neither Kay nor the viewers were prepared for. The irony is that both Kandi and Todd prided themselves on transparency. They built their marriage on communication and trust, on the idea that they could weather any storm as long as they were honest. And for the most part, they had been. Through public challenges, blended family tensions, financial stress, gossip, false rumors, everything. They survived it by being open. But the agreement Todd made with Porsha was not open. It was not discussed, was not approved, was not even mentioned. It was hidden. According to a source who later spoke with someone close to Kandi, the moment she discovered the agreement, her hands shook so violently she had to sit down. Her mind raced with questions she couldn't form into words. Why didn't Todd tell her? Why was Porsha involved? Why was this document written in such specific, calculated language? Why did it feel so personal, more personal than any business arrangement should ever feel? To understand why this agreement cut Kandi so deeply, you have to understand the context she was living in. For months, she had been battling exhaustion, balancing filming schedules, touring commitments, business launches, and family responsibilities. She trusted Todd to handle certain areas of their life. She trusted him to protect their partnership, their home, their empire. But trust is fragile. And one uncovered secret, one hidden document can shatter everything. The agreement itself wasn't simple, it wasn't vague, was detailed, pages long, outlining obligations, timelines, and decisions that Todd had no right making alone. And as Kandi read deeper into the contract, she noticed something chilling. Certain clauses that involved her by implication, not directly, but indirectly, suggesting that her name, her brand, her connections, and her resources were being leveraged. Without her knowledge, what made the situation worse was the realization that the agreement wasn't recent. It wasn't something Todd had just signed. It wasn't part of a new opportunity. It was months old, possibly a year. Meaning Todd had kept this from her for a very, very long time. As the truth began, those closest to Kandi said she didn't yell. She didn't scream. She didn't confront Todd immediately. She sat there, silent, processing. The weight of betrayal, not romantic betrayal, but emotional betrayal, loyalty betrayal, partnership betrayal. The kind of betrayal that makes you question your entire foundation. Meanwhile, Porsha, unaware that her involvement was about to detonate into chaos, as if everything was normal. She had no idea that the agreement she had signed with Todd would resurface in a way that would pull her into one of the most emotionally explosive confrontations in the Real Housewives universe. The more Kandi dug, the more she realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a miscommunication. This wasn't Todd doing something harmless and forgetting to mention it. This was intentional. This was premeditated. This was strategic. Someone close to the situation said Kandi kept asking the same question over and over. Why would he do this with Porsha of all people? Because Porsha wasn't neutral. This wasn't just another business partner. She had history with Kandi, real history, messy history, deep history. And the idea that Todd would form a private agreement with someone who once hurt Kandi so deeply. That was the emotional knife that cut the deepest. The background behind this agreement wasn't just betrayal, it was the rewriting of trust, the erosion of loyalty, the collapse of boundaries Kandi believed were unbreakable. And the most painful part was still ahead. Because when Todd finally walked into the room, unaware of what she had found, unaware of the pages she had read, unaware of the emotional devastation he was about to witness, Kandi looked at him with eyes he had never seen before. Eyes that said, "No." And everything changed. The moment Todd Tucker walked into the room, everything inside the house shifted. He didn't hear shouting. He didn't hear pacing. He didn't hear anger. What he heard instead was silence, heavy, suffocating, unnatural. Silence. The kind of silence that makes your stomach drop before you even know why. The kind of silence that tells you something is terribly, irrevocably wrong. Irrevocably wrong. Kandi was sitting at the edge of the couch, still holding the papers she had printed. Her hands weren't trembling anymore. Her breath wasn't shallow. Her eyes weren't filled with confusion. The shock had passed. What remained was something far more dangerous. Clarity. When she finally looked up at him, Todd froze. He knew immediately. He didn't know how she found it, when she found it, or how much she had read. But he knew the moment he saw the look in her eyes. Disappointment layered with heartbreak. Betrayal hidden beneath control. Confusion mixed with resolve. "Kandi, what's going on?" he asked, even though he already sensed the answer. She didn't respond. She simply held the papers out toward him, not angrily, not dramatically, but with a calmness that felt harsher than yelling ever could. Todd took the documents from her hand and stared down at the pages, his heart dropping into his stomach as he recognized the header at the top. His silence said everything she needed to know. He didn't deny it. He didn't pretend. He didn't act confused. He simply lowered the pages and whispered, "You weren't supposed to see that." That sentence was gasoline on an already burning fire. Kandi didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't let her voice crack. She spoke with an eerie calm. It's the kind that forms when pain has settled too deep for emotional outbursts. "How long have you been hiding this from me?" Todd swallowed hard. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. "How long, Todd?" She repeated, louder but still controlled. He closed his eyes, inhaled, exhaled, and finally said the truth in the quietest voice imaginable. "A year, a full year. 12 months of meetings, calls, planning, decisions without telling. Her 12 months of aligning himself with Porsha behind Kandi's back. 12 months of making choices that directly involved her without giving her the chance to consent or disagree. It wasn't the length of time that broke hit was. What that time represented. A year meant intention. A year meant strategy. A year meant secrets. Todd tried to explain. He said it wasn't personal. Said it was strictly business. Said he didn't tell her because he didn't want to stress her during an already overwhelming period. Said he planned on telling her eventually, but kept postponing it because the timing never felt right. Kandi listened, her expression unreadable. But inside, everything was UNRAVELLING. Business. Stress, timing. She had built an entire empire with him. They shared every financial plan, every creative project, every risk. He was her partner, not just in marriage, but in business, legacy, family. And yet he had signed a major agreement with a woman she had a complicated history with, without even giving her the courtesy of a conversation. Kandi's voice finally broke through his. "Excuses? You signed this with Porsha. Of all people. With her." Todd took a step forward, but she held up her hand. "Don't. It's just one word." But it stopped him cold. He tried again. "It wasn't like that. Wasn't behind your back and the way you're thinking." She cut him off, her voice sharp but shaking with hurt. "Todd, you left me out of something that directly affects my name, my brand, my marriage. You let someone who once tried to tear me down get closer to you than I even realized, and you did it, quietly." Todd ran his hand over his face, trying to steady himself. "It wasn't malicious, I swear. Porsha came to me with an idea. I thought it was something that could be good for us, good for you. But the moment I realized how deep it was getting, how complicated it was becoming, I didn't know how to bring it up." Kandi stared at him, her voice dropping to a whisper. You didn't know how to bring it up, or you didn't want to. Hear my reaction? Todd looked away. That silence was her answer. This wasn't just about the agreement. This was about trust, eroding quietly over time, about decisions made in shadows, about alliances forming without transparency. And Kandi wasn't angry, yet she was wounded. But the real conflict hadn't even begun. Kandi stood up, pacing for the first time since he walked in. Why would Porsha agree to this? Why would you agree to this? What is in this document that made both of you think it was okay to keep me out of it? Todd didn't respond immediately. His hesitation made her pulse quicken. What aren't you telling me? She demanded. Todd shook his head slowly, like he was battling himself, debating how much truth he was willing to reveal. But then he said something that made Kandi stop walking entirely. There's a clause in the contract that mentions you. Her heart dropped. Of all the nightmares this discovery had created, this was the one she wasn't prepared for. What? Clause? Her voice tightened. Todd hesitated again. It's nothing damaging. It just references show me, she demanded. He flipped several pages until he reached a section typed in smaller text. Buried beneath financial terms and development outlines. Kandi grabbed the papers, eyes darting across the lines until she reached the clause in question. And when she read, it really redded her breath caught in her throat. The clause referenced intellectual property linked to Kandi. Her influence, her involvement in potential projects, and her indirect role in future productions that Todd and Porsha had been planning. It wasn't illegal, it wasn't slanderous. But it implied something far more dangerous than financial misuse. Todd and Porsha had been leveraging Kandi's value, her brand, her connections, her legacy without her knowledge. Kandi's voice cracked for the first time. You used me as a bargaining tool. Todd panicked. No, that's not what it means. That is exactly what it means. She snapped, tears finally welling. You let Porsha negotiate around my influence? You let her build a strategy that included me without even warning me? Todd tried to step closer. Kandi, listen. But she didn't. She dropped the papers to the floor. You didn't just keep a secret. You let someone I didn't trust build a plan that involved me. You let her write my name into something without my permission. Todd didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink, because he knew she was right. Kandi wiped her eyes, her voice trembling but sharp. What did she offer you that made you agree? What promise did she make? What opportunity was so big that you were willing to betray me for it? Todd didn't answer. He couldn't. And that silence delivered the first major twist. The agreement between Todd and Porsha wasn't just a business deal. It wasn't just an opportunity. It wasn't just a project. It had conditions Todd had agreed to long before realizing how deeply they would affect his marriage. Kandi stared at him in disbelief, whispering the one question he couldn't escape. What did you two sign? That was worth sacrificing my trust. And that's when Todd finally revealed the truth. There's another document. Everything stopped. Another document. A second agreement. Something Kandi had not seen yet. And according to Todd, that one was worse. The air in the room changed the moment Todd admitted there was another document. The atmosphere went from betrayal to something far colder, something that wrapped itself around Kandi's chest and squeezed until breathing felt like a chore. She stared at him, unable to process the words at first. Another document? Another secret? Another agreement tied to Porsha. Kandi felt her pulse pounding in her ears, drowning out everything else. She had walked into this conversation thinking she was dealing with one betrayal, one signed deal, one devastating disappointment. But now she was learning that the first document, the one that had gutted her, was only the surface of something deeper, darker, and far more calculated. Where is it? She finally asked, her voice sharp yet hollow. Todd didn't move. It's not here. That answer was a dagger. Not here, meaning he kept it somewhere separate, hidden deliberately, protected. Where is it? This time the words trembled not with fear, but with a fury she was barely holding back. Todd rubbed his hands together, gazing, clearly searching for the safest version of the truth. But there was no safe version. Not anymore. Not after lying for a year and dragging Kandi into an arrangement she never agreed to. He finally spoke. It's at the studio. Kandi blinked. You stored it at the studio. Not at home? Not in your office. Did you put it somewhere I would never look? Todd tried to soften the blow. Wasn't about hiding it from you. You are hiding it from me. She snapped, tears suddenly breaking free. If it wasn't about hiding, why didn't you bring it home? Why didn't you put it somewhere I could find? Why wasn't it even mentioned to me? Todd swallowed hard. Because I didn't want... You two misunderstand. Kandi's voice rose. Misunderstand what? That you signed something else with Porsha? That you were planning something even bigger without me? That you involved my name, my influence, my business, and didn't even think I deserved a conversation about it? Todd closed his eyes. He knew she was right. Every word, every accusation, every layer of hurt. But the real truth, the one he had been avoiding, is the one that would shatter everything, still waiting to be revealed. Todd finally said it. The second document wasn't written by me and Porsha. It was written about you. Kandi froze mid-breath. About her. The world tilted for a moment as her brain tried to process the meaning. She felt heat rise in her face, panic setting in, chest tightening as though someone had reached inside and grabbed her entire world with both hands. What do you mean? About me? Her voice cracked. Todd hesitated, the silence stretching so long it became unbearable. Finally, he exhaled and said the words that detonated everything. The second agreement is something Porsha drafted. She wanted conditions. Kandi's entire body stiffened. Conditions? For what? Todd looked at her with eyes full of guilt he could no longer hide. Conditions? If we were ever going to work together long term. She wanted assurances about how things would operate, especially when it came to you. Kandi stared at him, horrified. So she made you sign something setting terms about me, about my involvement, about my future. Todd didn't answer. His silence was confirmation. Kandi placed both hands over her mouth, trying not to scream. The betrayal wasn't just personal anymore. It wasn't just emotional. It was structural. Her identity, the name she built, the empire she created had been used in negotiations between Todd and Porsha as if she were a bargaining chip. What were the conditions? She asked, barely audible. Todd hesitated again. One of them was that she wanted creative control over certain projects if we worked together. She didn't want you stepping in or overriding decisions. Kandi burst into a bitter laugh. One that came from pure disbelief and pain. Creative control? Over your projects. Over our household decisions. And you didn't think that was something I deserved to know? Todd rushed forward. It wasn't like that she was thinking ahead. In case we all partnered on something, she wanted to limit me, Kandi snapped. And you agreed? I didn't agree, Todd shouted, finally losing composure. I didn't sign that part. I refused. But the fact that she even put it in writing, I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to bring this into our marriage. Kandi stepped back as if his presence physically hurt her. You kept it from me anyway. That is bringing it into our marriage. It's already here, Todd. It's already ripping everything apart. Todd exhaled slowly, running his hands over his face. There's more. Kandi's heart dropped again. More. What else does the agreement say? She whispered. Terrified of the answer, Todd struggled to maintain eye contact. She wanted a clause that stated if you and she ever had public conflict again, I would stay neutral. Kandi looked like she had been slapped. You would stay neutral, she repeated. Meaning what? Meaning you wouldn't defend me. Meaning you wouldn't speak up for your wife. Meaning Porsha wanted you on her side door, at least not on mine. Todd's voice was faint. She said she didn't want to be dragged into personal drama. She wanted a safe working environment. Kandi's eyes filled with tears again. Safe. S-A-F-E. She wanted protection from me, and you didn't think that mattered enough to tell me. Todd reached toward her, but Kandi stepped back sharply. No, don't touch me, she said firmly. You let another woman dictate how you show up in our marriage. You let her have a say in your loyalty. Let her create rules that affect me, us, our family, and you kept it quiet because you didn't want to have a difficult conversation. Todd's chest rose and fell as he battled the weight of guilt crashing over him. I didn't sign that part either, he insisted. I refuse. But the fact that it exists means she felt entitled to ask. Kandi interrupted. The fact that it exists means she believed she had that kind of influence over you. The fact that it exists means you made her feel comfortable enough to propose boundaries in my marriage. Silence flooded the room again. Silence heavier than the first. A silence that meant something irreversible had shifted. Kandi walked toward the kitchen, to a place that had hosted years of family dinners, laughter, business talks, arguments, reconciliations. She placed her palms on the surface, leaning forward as if the weight of the truth was physically collapsing her. Todd, she whispered, did you ever tell her no? Did you ever say my wife would never agree to this? Did you ever defend me? Or did you just listen? Todd's voice broke. I didn't want to make things worse between you two. I thought if I stayed quiet, you made it worse, Kandi screamed, finally losing her composure. By hiding it, by pretending everything was fine. By letting her believe she had space in decisions that were supposed to be between us. Todd tried to speak, but no words came out. Kandi wiped her face, trying to gather strength, but every breath felt like a bruise. What else haven't you told me, Todd? What other agreements, calls, projects, promises? How many more secrets are there? Todd shook his head. Nothing else, I swear. That was the only other document. But the damage had been done. The marriage that once felt secure now felt unstable. Cracked, trembling under the weight of betrayal. And then came the final blow of the reveal. Todd stepped forward, voice low, expression defeated. Kandi, it's one thing you need to know. Porsha isn't the one who leaked the first agreement. Kandi blinked. What? Todd's voice dropped to a whisper. The leak came from someone in our circle. The room froze. Kandi's heart stopped. Her breath faltered. Someone she trusted, someone he trusted. Someone close enough to access their life had intentionally exposed the agreement, and that meant the betrayal wasn't just between Todd and Porsha. Someone else, someone closer, was pulling strings behind the SCENESA. Betrayal inside a betrayal. A deeper cut, a new enemy, and the truth behind that leak was about to rip everything open the moment the news of the hidden agreement hit the internet, before Kandi even had time to process the betrayal inside her own home. The world outside was already spinning out of control. A private issue between three people suddenly mutated into a global spectacle. And the wildfire spread faster than anyone expected. It began with a single leaked screenshot. A blurry capture of one page from the agreement Todd had signed with Porsha. Not the whole contract, not even the full clause. Just a cropped portion showing Todd's signature beside Porsha's name. Under a heading that read something like, Initial Terms of Cooperative Project Development. Within minutes, the screenshot had been reposted hundreds of times. Then thousands. Then tens of thousands. Fan pages, gossip blogs, Bravo commentary accounts, housewives, historians, everyone grabbed it and ran. Hashtags erupted instantly. Hashtag Todan Porshagriant, #Candidizervedbert, hashtag Who Leaked It, hashtag PORSHA exposed, hashtag Todd. Explain this. No one knew where the leak came from. No one knew who the leaker was. But the internet had a theory everyone did. Some fans believed Porsha leaked it herself, trying to get ahead of the story. Others believed Todd got sloppy. but the majority. They were convinced someone inside Kandi's circles, someone close, someone trusted, had turned on her. And the thought of that betrayal sent fans spiraling. The fan base was furious, confused, heartbroken for Kandi, and ready for war. People began taking sides almost instantly, dividing themselves into factions. Team Kandi, furious that Porsha and Todd conducted secret business behind her back. Enraged that Kandi's influence was used without her consent. Convinced Kandi was the victim of manipulation. Team Todd, a much smaller group, claiming Todd meant well, insisting he was just trying to secure new opportunities and didn't expect this level of fallout. Team Porsha arguing that this was business, not personal, and accusing Kandi fans of blowing it out of proportion. Team Chaos, the largest group, fascinated, shocked, and ready to see every detail unfold. But fans weren't the only ones reacting. Housewives cast members past and present jumped into the mix without hesitation. A former castmate tweeted, "This is why trust is everything in this circle," followed by a cryptic eyeball emoji that set Twitter ablaze. Another posted, "I told y'all years ago, nothing is what it seems on camera." Some fans interpreted these posts as indirect shots at Porsha. Others believed the shade was aimed at Todd. But the real speculation, that someone in Kandi's own circle, possibly someone viewed as loyal, had chosen to leak the agreement too, sabotage her marriage, or to create a storyline big enough to dominate the next season. Meanwhile, producers at Bravo were reportedly scrambling. According to an unnamed insider who spoke to a popular gossip page, production was shocked but thrilled, because a storyline of this magnitude wasn't just drama, it was ratings gold. This insider claimed that executives were already discussing how to incorporate the fallout into future episodes and confessionals. They wanted reactions, cast commentary, on-camera breakdowns, alliances forming, alliances breaking, everything raw and explosive. And if Kandi or Todd refused to film the emotional fallout, producers allegedly discussed the possibility of pushing harder or leveraging existing contracts to get them to talk. But the internet wasn't waiting for Bravo. They were dissecting every detail in real time. Creators on TikTok started posting long breakdown videos, analyzing the contract language, comparing Todd's past business ventures, studying old footage of interactions between Todd and Porsha. Some creators even pulled up clips from previous seasons where Porsha made comments that now seem suspicious. Lines that hinted at deeper familiarity with Todd than viewers originally realized. One TikTok went viral after showing a montage of moments where Todd defended Porsha during cast debates, using language that now felt like foreshadowing. The caption read, "Was this the moment it all started?" Millions watched. Thousands commented. People left comments like, "This makes way more sense now. So he was protecting her even then. Kandi deserved to know long ago. There's no way this was just business." The speculation got darker when fans began theorizing about motives. Why would Porsha want Kandi's influence included? Why would she want conditions set related to Kandi? Why would she want Todd neutral in future conflicts? One theory dominated the conversation. Porsha wanted control. Control over projects. Control over narratives. Control over Todd's involvement. Control over anything that might threaten her own brand. Meanwhile, fans pointed out that Porsha had a history of playing both sides when it benefited her. They began digging into past arguments, past alliances, past business attempts, anything that could reveal a pattern. But the biggest question remained: who leaked the agreement? Fans created massive threads listing possible suspects. Could it be a member of Kandi and Todd's staff? Someone in the production crew? Someone Porsha trusted? Someone close to Todd? Someone jealous of the business deal? Someone wanting to destroy Todd and Porsha's collaboration? Or someone trying to protect Kandi from a deeper betrayal? That last theory gained traction quickly. Many fans believed the leaker wasn't malicious, was someone who cared about Kandi and wanted her to know the truth before things got worse. They said the leak was a warning, a red flag, a desperate attempt to expose Todd and Porsha's alliance before it evolved into something bigger. Others argued the leak came from someone with ulterior motives, someone who wanted to fracture Kandi and Todd's marriage for personal gain. Fans began naming names, pulling receipts, dissecting friendships. Questioning loyalty. Twitter debates turned vicious. Kandi should leave him. Porsha is out of line. Someone is playing puppet master here. Whoever leaked this wants the whole house to burn. Blogs posted article after article. Podcasters recorded emergency episodes. YouTubers held live streams with thousands of viewers watching for updates, all while Kandi, Todd, and Porsha remained silent. Their silence became its own storyline. If Kandi hasn't spoken yet, she's devastated. Todd hasn't spoken, he's guilty. Porsha hasn't spoken, she's calculating her next move. Every second of their silence made fans more desperate for answers. But then something unexpected. HAPPENED, a private Instagram account, one followed by several Housewives alumni, posted a cryptic message. The leak didn't come from inside the house, it came from inside the circle. Fans lost their minds. Inside the circle? That meant someone with access to all three of them. Someone trusted. Someone who knew exactly where to find the documents Todd hid. Someone who wanted the explosion to happen now, within minutes. Speculation pointed at family, friends, producers, assistants, old cast members. But the truth or identity of the real leaker remained hidden, lurking in the shadows, and that mystery wasn't even the most shocking part. Because while the world was tearing itself apart trying to identify the leaker, Todd still hadn't revealed the full truth about what was written in the second document. And what happens next will shake the entire narrative to its core. The house was too quiet to still, too heavy with the weight of everything that had already been ripped open between them. But Kandi wasn't done. She couldn't be. Not when Todd had just dropped the bomb that someone inside their own circle leaked the agreement. And not when the second document, the one he claimed was worse still, hadn't been revealed. She stared at him, eyes glassy but fierce. "Tell me who leaked it," she demanded. Todd shook his head slowly. "I don't know for sure." "That's not good enough," she snapped. "There are only a few people who had access," he said softly. "But I need you to hear the rest before you know," she interrupted, voice sharp. "I need to know who betrayed me before anything else." Todd looked at her with a mix of guilt and fear, because that was the one question he didn't want to answer. The one truth he wasn't ready to speak aloud. Kandi. The leak didn't come from someone random. It came from someone who knew exactly where to look. Someone who has been in this house enough to feel comfortable digging where they shouldn't. He hesitated, swallowing hard. Someone who knew our dynamic and wanted to shift it. Kandi felt her heart drop. She whispered, "Who?" Todd finally said it. Don Juan. The name ripped through her chest. Her closest friend. Her longest standing ally. The person who had been by her side through every season, every fight, every business venture. The one person she believed would choose her loyalty above everything. Kandi's eyes widened as tears began to spill over. Don Juan. No, he wouldn't. He did, Todd said quietly. He was the only one with access. The only one who knew where I kept the first document at home. The only one who had reason to push it into the public. Kandi felt her throat close. Why would he do that? Why would he betray me like that? Didn't meet her eyes. Because he thought he was protecting you. He thought you deserved to know. And he thought the only way to force the truth out was to drag it into the light. She felt sick. The room was spinning. She didn't know if she was angrier at Todd for hiding the truth, or at Don Juan for exposing it without warning. Both betrayals were different kinds of cuts, one sharp, one deep. But she didn't have time to process the pain before the next blow landed. The second document, Kandi whispered hoarsely. We're not done. What's in it? Todd stepped back, leaning against the wall as though the weight of the truth was crushing him. I didn't sign it. I refused. But Porsche drafted it anyway. What did it say? Todd inhaled shakily. It wasn't just about creative control, or boundaries, or neutrality in conflicts. It was something else. He paused. Kandi, he said quietly. Porsha tried to build a contingency plan for us separating. Kandi felt the air leave her lungs. What? Todd nodded. It was an agreement outlining how business assets tied to both our names could be redistributed if our marriage ever fell apart. Kandi stared at him, speechless. She made a draft, he continued, voice barely above a whisper. A plan for what would happen if you and I were no longer together. What projects she could keep, what ideas she could claim, what revenue she could receive. It was a separation blueprint. Kandi looked horrified. And you didn't tell me? Todd shook his head. I was going to. But when I saw what it was, I realized how manipulative it was. I refused to sign anything. I told her it was going too far, but she already had. It drafted. And I didn't know how to explain that without hurting you even more. Kandi took several steps back, almost tripping over her own feet. She stared at him like she didn't recognize him anymore. Porsha created a separation plan for my marriage. With my husband. Todd's voice broke. Yes, and I didn't know how to tell you because I knew it would destroy everything. Kandi sank onto the nearest chair, her hands shaking uncontrollably. So let me get this straight, she said, voice trembling. Porsha drafted a document planning what you would get from OUR World. If we ended. Todd nodded slowly. Kandi's face twisted in anguish. Why would she do that? Why would she think she even had the right? Todd hesitated, then revealed the final twist. Because someone told her our marriage was already in trouble. Kandi's head snapped up. Who told her that? Todd closed his eyes. Don Juan. Silence exploded in the room. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It wasn't just a bad decision. Wasn't just a leaked agreement. It was sabotage. Sabotage from the inside. From the person she trusted with everything. The person she believed would defend her, protect her, and warn her if anything threatened her happiness. And now she was learning that he had fed Porsha information wrong. Information that she and Todd were drifting apart, which gave Porsha the confidence to draft a separation plan that should have never existed. Kandi felt her heart break in a way she hadn't felt in years. Not because of Porsha, not because of Todd, but because of Don Juan. Her voice was barely audible. He thought my marriage was failing, so he helped her prepare for the fallout. Todd looked devastated. It wasn't his place. It wasn't his right. But he convinced himself he was protecting you. And now, everything is spiraling. Kandi stood up slowly, wiping her face, her expression shifting from heartbreak to something colder, sharper, more dangerous. This isn't just betrayal, she whispered. This is a setup. And then came the final cliffhanger. Todd's phone buzzed. He looked down. His face went pale. Kandi asked, "What is it?" Slowly turned the screen toward her. A message from an unknown number. You stopped one document. You won't stop the next. And attached to the message was a PDF file. The title read, Draft Agreement, Joint Transition Plan. It wasn't from Todd. It wasn't from Porsha. Wasn't from Don Juan. Someone else, someone neither of them expected, had just sent a third document. And this one was addressed to Kandi. Before you leave this video, take one moment and really think about everything that just unfolded. This wasn't a small misunderstanding. This wasn't petty drama. This was a chain reaction of secrets, betrayals, hidden documents, and shocking intentions that reached into the core of Kandi's marriage, her friendships, her business, and her entire world. We're talking about agreements written behind her back, clauses that used her name without permission, a separation plan she never imagined. and a leak that came from someone she trusted more than almost anyone in her life. And now another document. Has appeared, a third one, a new one. A document addressed to Kandi directly. What does it say? Who drafted it? Why did they send it now? What is the real motive behind this growing web of manipulation? And most importantly, who is pulling the strings behind all of this? Drop your theories in the comments right now. Who do you think is behind the third document? Do you believe Don Juan leaked the first one to protect Kandi or to sabotage her? Do you think Porsha was working alone, or did she have someone pushing her from behind? And what do you think Todd was truly protecting when he kept those papers hidden? I want to hear every thought, every prediction, every angle. The comment section is officially open for investigation. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button because we are nowhere near the end of this story. This is only the beginning. The next reveal could change everything we think we know about these relationships, these alliances, and the real motivations operating behind closed doors. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update, because the moment we get the truth about the third document, we're breaking it down instantly. Share this video with someone who follows the Housewives universe, someone who needs to understand the depth of what's happening here. And get ready.
Okay.
Because whatever is inside that third document is going to flip this entire storyline upside down. The fallout is coming. And when it hits, no one will be untouched.